Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We are going to start this session now after this beautiful lunch to start the session to help you to digest. We have the panelists. We are very happy to have the panelists as my colleague Yara introduced the panelists. I'm going to introduce them. We are going to start with a presentation by Mr. Kamel Saleh. Mr. Magdi Saleh, Kamel Saleh is a managing partner at Deloitte Egypt. He is a colleague in the accountant institutions, chartered accountant in England. And he is well experienced in the field of taxation and the cross-borders transactions. He is a general secretary of and a board member of the Egyptian Accountant Associations. Please, the floor is yours.
مساء الخير. أنا أرحب بيكم. I'm not sure whether we should go in English or in Arabic. Can we do it in English? A mix, okay. So today we're talking about SMEs ودور الشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة في الاقتصاد وكيفية الاستفادة منهم و
the challenges of formal sector and taxation of SMEs and answering the main question, the participation of the informal sector, and do we want to include the informal sector in the formal economic sector, and what are the proper mechanisms that we are going to use, and what is the time frame. It's well known that it's well known that the small and medium enterprises, and we can add the micro, so it is the SMEs in some of the definitions is can represent two important things representing the most important items or factors in the employment in the field of employment in a society like Egypt, and it is also considered as a unicorn in development and growth. There are lots of ideas and lots of projects that will drive and push the society, the development from the SMEs. It's a diverse and generally it is sustainable, or we are working to be sustainable. It brings to the market new ideas, new development ideas. Some good ideas comes from the SMEs. I'm going to talk about this, and then we will identify either it is formal or informal sector. Then we are going to talk about the how to enforce and how to consolidate these two sectors. A part of the SMEs, it is the startups that we hear about all over the world, and in Egypt it is the small and the medium enterprises and the micro. So it is the entrepreneur spirit, the initiative of the entrepreneurs, in addition to new ideas and new mechanism to work on the efficiency of the market. The size of the informal sector in Egypt, unfortunately, it is unknown, but we have some indicators. Yes, we don't know the size, but if we talked about the SMEs, there are some estimations that about 75% of the employment in Egypt, they are concentrated in this formal and the informal sector, and they represent about 75% of the GDP. These are not precise statistics because I don't have precise statistics, but the indications is the size is very big that requires from us to deal with it in a specific way in order to achieve the objectives. Talking about the taxes and the taxation in the SMEs should be tailored for this sector. There is a kind of diversification in this department, but the taxation should be tailored made. I'm sorry because the slides are not clear. I will try as much as I can to make it clear on the screen. If we looked at the definitions, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the definitions of the SMEs, we have various definitions of the SMEs. One of them is related to the revenue, what is lower than a specific number. There are many definitions. Regardless of the definitions, we said that there is a large number of the economy is concentrated in this sector. There is 8.8 million entrepreneurs in Egypt. There are some statistics saying that it is 2.5, 3.8. There is another estimation concerning this economy that it is $400 million. There are lots of numbers, but all these numbers indicates that it is big inside this sector. There is a kind of diversification. There is nothing which is a standard. It actually starts with the person that is working at home, to reaching the startup in the high tech and in the digital economy. We have many companies in Egypt that they are startups in such a trend. However, if we looked at the size of this economy, which is inside the formal economy, we will see that 84%. It is not a precise statistics, but it gives an indication. 84% are not captured in any other place. 84% is an effective number, but it has its own reasons, and in order to find the solutions, we have to look for the reasons. From among the reasons, the high cost of being committed in the formal economy, which is the high burden compliance, that they are vulnerable to bureaucracy, and they are highly affected with the commitments issuing the license and the registration, in addition to dealing with the Egyptian tax authority, which is the bureaucracy, and the complication dealing with the formal authority. And the burden of these companies concerning this decisions of this institutions. Sometimes the regulators in Egypt, when they take a decision or when they issue a legislation, they don't differentiate, or they don't think about how difficult it is to implement such laws and such regulations on the SMEs. So there is an additional burden that is created, which is the non-compliance, and this will not encourage these SMEs to be part of the formal economy. If we looked at the doing business report, the ECES doing business, comparing between the countries all over the world, we will see that we are ranked number 128, and this is from the SMEs perspective. Number 128, Egypt is number 128 in the perspective of the SMEs, and this is related to how difficult it is to implement the regulation and to implement the laws. So the reasons are very well known that they will drive the people and the companies out of the formal economy. Then if you look at the alarm, the red bell, the alarm sign, unfortunately, many of the companies, the startups companies in Egypt, they start unfortunately in an unorganized way, away from the formal system, and then they will face lots of complications how to be included again in the how to be organized and how to be in the formal economy. Actually, I would like to ask a question to think about. We said in the first session, we would like all these people to be part of the formal economy. We want to include this department, this sector in the formal economy for many reasons. Some of these reasons are very correct, are very right, but some of these reasons need to be reconsidered. The argument that we need these companies to be part of the formal economy, one of the most important reasons, we want to broaden the base of the tax base, and for this reason we need to include these institutions to the formal economy. It might be not the objective, it might be a result, an impact, but this mustn't be or might be the objective. But it is always discussed as one of the advantage on the microeconomic level to include the informal sector. The second reason is when they are included in the formal sector, this will give them a chance to improve their creativity and innovation and productivity. From the institutional point of view, sometimes the government, when they don't have enough information, it will be very hard for the government to take the proper decision and to issue proper statistics. So and also it's difficult to impact because the informal sector is not related to the banking system, and it is not related to the capital market, and it is not related to many mechanism or related to the taxes. So the mechanism, the governmental mechanism to impact on the informal sector will be very limited. Then the third reason, the distribution of the resources in the economy, when there is a part which is dealing with no relation at all with the tax authority, for sure it will have a negative impact. Then concerning the investments, they are considered to be higher risk. If someone will the cost will be high because it is not clear and it is with a high risk, and also the interest of the loan will be high for the informal sector, so this is considered to be high risk. There are other important points. Doesn't have any access to the market. He cannot protect the employees in this sector because they are not socially insurance covered, because it's all an informal sector. No protection for the intellectual property because it's informal, and there is also another problem concerning the control and the regulation for the safety and the health on the products and on the productions, and there is lack of competition with the formal sector. All these indicators push us to include the informal sectors in the formal sectors, but there are many other arguments on the other side. I just want to tackle some of the points. The informal economy, and especially the micro and the small, to include them in the formal sector will raise the cost of doing business, and therefore they are going to lose the competitiveness effect. But the informal sector provides services with low costs for specific sectors of the society. Most probably, it's very difficult to have a service provider like this unless it is informal. So there are very strong reasons that part of the informal sector can end if we forced them to be included in the formal sector, and there will have a high cost for monitoring. If we tried, actually, I don't think that there is someone that he wants to try to include the informal in the formal. And in addition to this, the loss of employment, because this sector create lots of job opportunities, so it might lose lots of employees, especially that this sector that they actually hire or employ people with high performance. On the other side, they also hire and employ people with very low performance. So there is an argument that we always should should think about our objectives. The tax policy in this frame, what is the role of the tax policy to encourage the formalization and voluntary compliance from the companies and from the institutions to be part of the formal sector? Either they are SMEs or micro, either they are partially compliant. How to raise the voluntary compliance through the tax policy. I claim that we should accept that there is a great sector of the informal economy. We should be away from it. We shouldn't interfere. We should not encourage them to be part of the formal sector. And I mean by this, the micro, which is the lower part of the job, for many reasons. From among of these reasons that we will not be able to do this. We don't have the capability to do this, and we shouldn't think about this from the beginning. But the tools that we have, the tax rates, the efficient tax collection, combating corruption, and arbitrary assessment, and tax avoiding, the policies should stimulate the startups and try to improve the startups with a different mechanism, like decreasing the tax rate. And these mechanisms and incentives that will encourage the existence of new investors. Talking about the developed countries, that the SMEs is a little bit more formalized than Egypt. As the information I know, that simplifying the tax system is considered to be one of the main pillars, that the tax system that is applied should be a very simple in its mechanism, simple and proper to its to the size of the SMEs, and far away from complication. And from among this, it's not clear on the slides, the new ideas, the presumptive tax, and the cash flow, organizing the cash flow. Again, simplifying the bookkeeping requirements, or the exemption of the accounting standards, or the useful file requirements compared to the bigger companies. What are the challenges that we face in Egypt? We have legal challenges. There are a huge number of laws and regulations that they organize the business of any formal institution, and for sure you have a great experience in this field, issuing the registration and the license, dealing with the governmental institutions, which is a kind of a network, and this is also considered to be as a fragmentation of the small sectors. Numbers of institutions that I have to be compliant with them to get approval, but not for once. It's done for many times, so the cost of compliance is very high. Also, there is another problem, that the public servants that I deal with in any governmental institutions, unfortunately, there is not any kind of accountability on them. So, for example, when they're dealing with the SMEs with an unfair way, or with a wrong way, and did not implement the laws, there is no accountability at all. It might be, if I am a big company, I will have the opportunity to have better tools in order to take my right. So if I am a small company, I don't have any mechanisms, so I will be corrupted, and I will be corrupted in order to overcome my problem. the last point concerning the challenges, lack of information, no database about the business of the SMEs that will facilitate the drafting of a tax policy, a tailored tax policy. But it seems that the database and the information we have lack of information and database, and then we don't have a specific requirements for the companies, and this is because of the challenges that faces the institutions. Trying to wrap up with the final slides. We have lots of projects to amend the laws, but I'm talking about the taxations of SMEs. We imagine that the tax policy, we should start with by dividing the SMEs into sectors. Here we say they are 4, they might be more than 4. If we can say the tier 1, which is the micro, which is, in my opinion, we have to keep it aside just to specify and define its characteristics, and then keep it aside. And it might be, if we measure it with the GPT, if I say if it's a company, its revenue less than 100,000 Egyptian pounds, I have nothing to do with it. I don't want what they are doing. But from a tax perspective, it's better. And there are some countries that they decided that the micro enterprises, we are not going to touch them. The other stages, for example, for those who are lower than the minimum for registering for the AVT, to set a fixed tax, a fixed amount. Either it is related to get a license, if he is a driver, for example, to pay something when he gets his license, or he is buying a trade license to pay like 1,000 Egyptian pounds in order to get this license, to pay just 1,000 pounds. If he is a trader, he will pay like 1,000 Egyptian pounds a year, and he will get his license, and he will not pay the AVT, and that's it. There is no file requirements, and nothing is required from him. Rather than this, we need to reconsider dealing with those companies in a way with a reporting and a tax system that is related to the results. The result tax, which it might be a percentage of the revenue, of the profit, to make sense. It might be flat, but at the end it's a very simple rate, and they might have a choice or an optional, those who feel that it is unfair to submit a tax report on cash basis. But we try to simplify as much as we can, the revenue multiplied with a constant number. What's bigger than this? We have, for example, in the regulations and the tax law, those revenue less than 2 million Egyptian pounds for the companies, for the equity companies. So it might make sense to set a fixed number, that there is no report requirements from the tax perspective, because from the tax perspective I can simplify this issue, and I take a simple tax based on a cash base. These tools and these ways, they are implemented all over the world. It can be more simplified and it can be tailored, but the objective at the end is to lower the burden on such companies from the compliance as much as we can. And I think that the law projects that are not officially declared can be discussed, and it exists. It's at the end of the last two slides, talking about the tax incentives. Are we in need to decrease the tax rate? This is a very important discussion. It has its own ways and its own means, but as the tax rate should be reasonable, it is very important to have transparency. I'm talking about the SMEs paying taxes, and that they do have revenue or a profit more than 2 million EGP. To have transparency, how we are going to deal with incentives that can be provided to such companies from among the super production, to help and support them. I give him a kind of a deduction. If, for example, he paid for like 100,000 Egyptian pounds, paying the salaries of his employees, I'll do a kind of deduction for the amount of tax that he's going to pay by the end of the year. Then the amnesty, it's if we work on the amendments on the law, shall we forget the old law and the old legislation and the old regulations? So before talking about this, we have to reconsider, rethink about this, how we benefit from this. The last point. Actually, I'm in a rush, I know, but we are running out of time. Supporting and enhancing the SMEs, it might need an entity. This entity can be an existing entity, or we create a new entity, but the SMEs, they need professional people. They know what they want, and they know what are the laws that need to be amended, because as we said, that SMEs, it has lots of diversity, and we have to put it in consideration, and to put in consideration this kind of diversity, the moving towards a cashless society and the electronic payment. This will help, but alone it won't be enough, because in Egypt, as there are people that they are risk averse, we are government averse. They are very sensitive talking about governments. So in order to include the sector that we need to the formal economy, we should have a proper and suitable laws and regulation to help them to be more successful, more than the effort that is exerted in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamel Magdi, for your informative presentation. We wish we could have more time, but we can still benefit from your knowledge as a panelist.